Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with a Coach. Today we have a question from our friend Lourdes, who says, I feel like lately you've started saying more and more that you cannot make decisions in people's lives in place of themselves. That's true. That's kind of a general rule that I go for when choosing questions for Q&A with a coach, because a lot of people, hundreds of people, maybe even thousands, have sent me emails basically saying, Ramsey, please make my decisions for me. Choose for me the martial art that I will train in. Choose for me my training schedule and regiment. Choose for me what I will eat for breakfast, what I'll wear when I go out, or just nitty-gritty things like that you don't need anybody else making decisions about except for you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take away your free will, man. That's not what it's about. My job as a coach is not to usurp authority over your decision-making. Facilitating better decision-making in the context of the sport of mixed martial arts, yeah, that's something I can do. But making decisions for you, no. Anyway, let's read the rest of Lourdes' question. I feel that having to say that is sad. Yeah, it is. It is. So if you send me a question, please don't ask me to make your life choices for you. But this question is going somewhere, I promise you. Here we go. In my understanding, combat sport or any high-level activity tend to teach people to act their way. In your career as coach, did you find that getting people skilled in something helped them to make decisions in other aspects of their life? Yes. That's an interesting thing that you said right there, that coaches, I'm paraphrasing here, coaches basically will often try to get their students to emulate them. Like, there are a lot of fighters turned coaches out there, and they try to coach people to be the type of fighter that they are or that they were, as opposed to the best potential fighter that that person could become, right? So, everybody's different, everybody has different skill sets and different potentials. Some people have great potentials as power punchers, some people have a better potential as a grappler, and so on. So the game plan is going to be different for each individual person. I notice this a lot. Sometimes I'll see somebody who's like a phenomenal kickboxer, but he's got a very specific skill set that is very unique to him, that is extremely difficult to teach another person with a different physique, for example. And yeah, they often get frustrated, like, man, why can't they fight like me? Because you're a mutant, that's why. Anyway, a good coach will recognize differences in others, and yeah, there are many things that are universal and everybody should understand, but at the same time, game plans for fights will stress your strengths against the weaknesses of your opponents, so they will constantly vary depending on who is fighting who. That being said, that next part of your question, the most intriguing part of this question, are there other aspects of these lives, of the lives of the students that I've taught martial arts to, that I've coached in MMA, that has helped them make decisions in other aspects of their lives? Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I have helped a lot of people to quit smoking, but I have never told them to quit smoking. How does that work? Okay. Same thing with drinking and drug abuse. I've helped a lot of people to quit smoking and drinking and abusing harmful drugs and straightening out their lives in a lot of ways without ever asking them to. How does that work? I encourage people to participate in this extremely physical task of being the best cage fighter they possibly can, and that's super demanding. And if you're a smoker, you're going to get smoked by people who don't smoke, if you will. If you drink, you're going to get squashed by people who don't drink in the long run. if you're abusing your body with harmful drugs, harmful substances, putting poisons in there, you're going to have a hard time against the people who don't, right? Those people who live clean. They're going to have an advantage over you. And people feel that. They feel that right away. I don't have to tell them smoking and drinking is bad for you. Because they feel like, oh, my lungs. I don't have the lung capacity that I need to do this highly athletic activity. Maybe I should cut down on the smoking. And I've had so many students, so many athletes, so many clients who come in for personal training who tell me their story about how they have cut down, how they've quit, that, just taken that poison out of their lives. And I never told them, stop smoking, stop drinking. And there's a reason for that. Because when you get preachy at people and tell them you're wrong and you need to change, we resent that. Even though it's true. I mean, you know smoking is bad for you. Some of you smoke, some of you drink, right? I've had stories shared with me from viewers of this channel. And I get it. People fall into various vices throughout their lives for all kinds of different reasons. Okay? You know it's not good for you, right? But you have to find something that you want more than that vice. That you need more. I had a student named Roy, and he was a video game programmer. This Chinese guy, and he was kind of unusual when he first came to the gym because he was fat, and especially at that time, I had never seen a fat Chinese guy before. There just weren't very many of them. But he was unusually fat for a Chinese guy. And he was a video game programmer. He had just finished a project, and so he was looking for another job, and he had some off time. He was like, what am I going to do? I've got like months between projects, so I'm going to do something with myself. And he decided he was going to sign up for a martial arts class. He came to my gym, tried it out, and after about 2 minutes of the warm-up, he was gassed. He was like, oh, I can't do this. But he kept coming back. Every day he would do a little bit more, just a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And Roy, man, I love Roy so much because he changed so much about his life. He wanted to be able to fight more than he wanted to be fat. He wanted to gain control of his life more than he wanted to give in to whatever it was that brought him to that state in his life that made him healthy and unfit and unable to move the way he wanted to move. He wanted that more. And I didn't have to say anything about, portion control or nutrition or whatever. He figured it out. If I want to move the way I need to move, to do this activity the way I want to do it, I need to fuel my body better. And I noticed something about Roy over the months, over the years. He lost a bunch of weight. That fat came off. He started building some muscles. He started lifting weights. He buckled down big time. And this guy had no quit in him. This was a man with heart, We always talk about fighters with heart. And sometimes that term is abused and misused to mean that that guy's taking some punishment in the ring. He's just getting beaten up like, Rocky, those movies where Rocky gets beaten up for 9 rounds and then in the 10th round he makes a comeback. But in real life, if a guy takes a beating like that, that barely ever happens. He usually loses or suffers serious brain damage, man. So we tend to think Rocky has heart because he won't go down, right? But Roy showed heart in training, because not only would he not quit when the going got tough, man, he stepped up. And he changed. He went from an unconfident, a man with no confidence. He went from that to a man with great confidence, who was willing to step in the ring with anyone. And not just that, a man who developed these interpersonal communication skills he didn't have before. He went from being kind of a boring, uninteresting guy to being a really interesting guy. Another thing that was interesting, he told me that he signed up for my class specifically because he wanted to improve his English, and I taught my classes in English, and he thought, well, it's cheaper than English classes. It's cheaper than getting an English tutor, so, I might as well do this. And his English skills improved so much, too. Oh, man. After a couple of years, Roy was conversationally fluent in English. This guy, man, I love him so much, and I would always bring him up as this shining example of what can be accomplished when a new student would come in and say something along the lines of, oh, this is hard, I don't think I can do this, and I would say basically, look, you have a greater potential than other students I've seen who have gone farther than you could ever imagine. Like right now, you're healthy. You don't gas out after a minute of a simple warm-up. That's a gift, right? That is a gift. Man, Roy is a guy who started out rock bottom, basically. Rock bottom as far as fitness and athleticism. And he went on to compete in about 17 amateur boxing matches. He won most of them. He competed in a dozen amateur kickboxing matches and Muay Thai fights, and won all except for one of them. He competed in 2 amateur MMA fights and 1 tournament, and, he did an awesome job, mostly wins, which I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of, because this is a guy who paid attention. But I'm so much more honored, not proud, but honored at the fact that he was able to change his life and change his character in the most positive of ways. Winning fights, that's fun, but that's a byproduct, if you will. There are some terrible human beings out there who can win fights. There are some mean-spirited, nasty individuals that you don't want anything to do with who can win fights. But changing your character for the better, man, that is the fight worth fighting. But I've seen this again and again. I've seen people go from essentially nothing to something. I had a student who was a very slightly framed girl, this girl named Jo from England. Shout out to Jo if you're watching, love you to death. And she had this unique talent, this unique untapped talent of being able to teach skills. And I noticed this, but I don't think she really had the opportunity to do it. And I noticed she picked up jiu-jitsu really quickly, picked up technique really quickly, and understood it at a level that a lot of the other students didn't. And one day I thought, you know what, I'm going to give her an opportunity to teach this. And so for the first few minutes of the class, I said, Jo, will you teach this technique? And she was like, whoa. What did she do? Oh, man. Beautiful lesson. Beautiful example of pedagogy. And she taught the technique, just perfectly expounded on it, answered questions. And I was like, man, something more valuable than somebody who can win fights is somebody who is able to lift everybody in the room higher. So that's a change I saw right there. What else? Man, seen it again and again. I want to take a look specifically at the language of that question. In your career as coach, did you find that getting people skilled in something helped them to make decisions in other aspects of their life? Now, obviously, I don't have spy cameras on my students seeing what are they doing now, what kind of choices are they making. But they will often come back to me and tell me about what they're doing with their life. I had this dude from Brazil, Arthur. Shout out to Arthur. Arthur, you're awesome. And he was a young guy when he came and trained with me in Shanghai. And he kind of a hot-headed guy. He loved to fight. He loved to get into street fights too. Loved to get into scraps. And very, very talented, very athletic, guy with a good heart. And at the same time, like many young men, guy got that young man's ego going, which can take us in all kinds of negative directions. And I kept in contact with him on social media, and we still talk from time to time on Facebook and so on. And Arthur tells me about his life, and he tells me about the direction he's been going, and I see it's a positive one. And it makes me so happy that, you know, this young man who came to my class essentially because he wants to learn how to beat people up better, took that teaching and turned it into something much more positive. And that's the beauty of a good martial arts class, a good martial arts coach, is that they can inspire not just great fighters, but essentially effect positive change in the world around them. Because there's a ripple effect. If you think that what you do doesn't matter, it does. It does affect those around you. Everything you do affects other people in some way. I mean, right now we see, with a virus going around the world that can infect people by coughing on them or sneezing on them, people are starting to develop this new culture of, I'm going to wear a mask as a sign of respect for you so that, you know, I won't cough or sneeze or breathe on you and possibly infect you because I care about you. And that's an aspect of the culture that didn't really exist before. In a world where it was very much about me, what can I get for me? Now we're having to look out for each other in a different way. And so there are some very positive things coming out of this negative experience, which reminds me a lot of fighting. Fighting in so many ways is a negative experience. It is, man. We're doing something destructive. We're doing something violent. We're getting hit. We're getting hurt. We're hurting other people. There's a lot to unpack there. It's you go through this whole range of emotions and experiences, and it's not all positive, but you go through that refiner's fire, if you will, and what comes out the other end is something refined. You burn up the dross and you come out with the gold. And on the other hand, I've seen the opposite. I've seen coaches with less than noble intentions who, yeah, man, affected change in their students, change in their athletes, but not a positive one. So, if you are in a role of influence, and you influence the world, whether you have a popular YouTube channel or a Instagram account or not, you influence the world around you. So ask yourself that question. Not as a coach, but as a human being, as, Jack or Joe or Jane or whoever's watching this channel. I don't know all your names, but if that's you watching this channel, in your life as a human being, did you find that your actions helped other people to make decisions in other aspects of their lives? Chew on that for a minute. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train. And for those of you about to say, I can't go out there and train because of the virus, there is where you are. And if you're about to type that, drop and give me 50 push-ups.